Good evening. I welcome you to a joyful night of grief and mourning. Come on in. Let's pass these around. Yes, we can start, yeah? All right, good. So good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Feinstein. I'm one of the rabbis here at VBS, and we're delighted to welcome Valley Beth Shalom. We're delighted to welcome friends from Adat Ariel, friends from Stephen S. Weiss, and people in the neighborhood who thought we were serving a nice meal. And ain't you going to be surprised. We had a debate on the way in about what's the proper greeting for Tisha B'Av. You can't say Good Yontif because it's not Yontif. You can say Shavua Tov, but that sort of defeats the purpose of the thing, right? So if anybody thinks of a good thing to say, hi is always good, or something like that. So it's really good to have you here. We're going to begin with some learning together, and then we'll pray through the Mariv prayers, and then we'll read the traditional book of Eicha and celebrate celebrate or commemorate, I guess is the right word. Is that better? This special day. If you didn't get one of the texts, they're right up here. It says when it all falls apart. Everybody get that one? Is that what it says at the top? Yeah. We have a bunch of them, so please come and take one. Good. So in the spirit of communal learning, we're going to split this up tonight, and Rabbi Sari Laufer of Stephen Weiss and Rabbi Jessica Yarkin of Adat Ariel and I will share this, and there's many rabbanim and scholars and imaginative people who wanted to be rabbis in the room tonight, so you all have a chance to share this reading with us, okay? Good. Come in, make yourselves uncomfortable. So all of the catastrophes that befell the Jewish people during our long history, they did not all take place actually on Tisha B'Av. But that's the myth of this day. So the myth of the day is to gather up all of these moments of destruction, catastrophe, and exile, and concentrate them all on one day. And I think that the psychology of that is rather wise, because if you didn't do that, if you actually celebrated or commemorated all of these moments throughout the year, you wouldn't be able to go 2 weeks without having to have a fast day. And rather than have the texture of Jewish life or the fabric of Jewish life be pockmarked with these constant reminders of destruction and exile, the rabbis decided to take all of it and put it on one day in the middle of the summer. It's terrible if you're a summer camp counselor, but for the Jewish people, it's a wonderful kind of gift. And because it's 7 weeks before the high holidays, it's sort of, can you hear okay? Higher? Yes? Okay, I'll talk louder. Because it's 7 weeks before the high holidays, it sort of becomes a sort of overture for the coming of the holidays. Because the holidays, of course, are going to be talking about repentance and cheshbon nefesh, self-evaluation. And that's one of the themes of this holiday. The theology, we'll read this in Eicha a little bit later, but the theology, the philosophical underpinnings of this day, is the rabbinic idea that God is the principal actor in history. And if we suffer, it's because God has decided we deserve to suffer. The rabbinic idea was that suffering is always punishment. Either punishment for our own sins or punishment for another generation's sin, but always some sort of punishment as a response, a recompense for sin. And therefore, you fast on this day, not to commemorate the catastrophe, you fast out of repentance. You fast out of repentance for the sins that brought the catastrophe. And you ask God for tshuva, for repentance, for return. So at the end of Eicha, when we get to the 5th chapter of Eicha, we're going to get to that famous line, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. Bring us back. Bring us home. Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. Give us back the vitality of the ancient ones. Nashuva, give us tshuva. Give us the ability to come home again. That's the principal theology of the holiday. And for that reason, modern people have a great deal of trouble with this. It was decided by the Israeli government many, many years ago not to put the Shoah as part of Tisha B'Av, not to commemorate the Holocaust as part of this day, because they couldn't abide by that theology. because nobody could stomach the idea that somehow the destruction of European Jewry is God's punishment of a sinful Israel. It's one thing to look upon the destruction of the temple, but to think about an event as catastrophic as the Holocaust and as close by as somehow a punishment was something that that traditional Jews, even very Orthodox Jews, with a very small exception of a very few, really couldn't abide by. So they've made a separate holiday for Yom HaShoah. And the question is, how long will that be? Will it ever be assimilated into this? Or will this just become sort of a relic as we remember a different way of doing this? The other reason why modern Jews have a hard time with that idea, of course, is that the state of Israel exists. Most of you knew that, right? I mean, this morning we talked, my dear teacher, David Hartman, told a story. And if those of you know David Hartman, he told the same story over and over and over again. How in 1970, he was a rabbi in Montreal, an Orthodox synagogue at the Shar in Montreal, and he took his family for a trip to Israel. And it was 1970. It was still after the euphoria of the '67 war. And he walked the streets of a liberated Jerusalem. And he was so excited by this, of the vitality and life of the Jewish state and of the city of Jerusalem and its holiness. And he comes back to Montreal just in time for Tisha B'Av. And he walks into a synagogue, and there are hundreds of people sitting on the floor of his Orthodox synagogue with candles, singing Echa and singing the Kinot, these very sad dirges that we'll sing, about how this temple is destroyed and we live in exile and the Jewish people is decimated. And he says, guys, I got good news. It's ours again. It's ours. Get up off the floor. And they wouldn't do it. They said, Reb David, shut up. We're davening, right? And that's when he knew he couldn't live in diaspora anymore. That's when he knew there was something profoundly broken in diaspora Judaism, because diaspora Judaism didn't take seriously the spiritual revolution that a liberated state of Israel, a reborn state of Israel, represented. And that's another reason it makes this holiday. I'm giving you all the reasons why you shouldn't celebrate the holiday you've come tonight to celebrate. Right? This is for those of you who are not from Valley Beth Shalom, this is how we do things around here. It's an advanced course in heathenism, in heresy. So tonight we're going to remember all of these events. The destructions, the exile, the catastrophes. And the principal, the archetypal moment, is the destruction of the temple in the year 70 by the Romans. Now, the history is very simple. In 64 BCE, Jerusalem was taken by Pompey, the great Roman general. And Jerusalem became part of a Roman province called Judea. And the Roman province of Judea was a very wealthy area. It was governed by a Roman governor who was chosen by the emperor. And because it was so wealthy, it was a plum. Anyone who got the job would get rich because you're collecting taxes for the emperor. So instead of sending able administrators, they send FOEs, friends of the emperor, each one more incompetent than the last. And each one managed to offend the local population in farther and deeper and more creative ways, until the Jews of Palestine, the Jews of Jerusalem, had enough. And in the year 67 CE, that's 67 after zero, this is 2018, 67, the Jews of Jerusalem rose up against the Romans. Rising up against the Roman means you marched on the Antonia fortress, which is just to the north part of the city. You murdered all of the soldiers that were there, and you raised the flag and declared your independence. Now, the Romans were freaked out by this. First of all, because the Roman Empire at that moment was an empire far overextended. It's having a hard time holding on to the edges of its provinces. And the most important threat to the empire was on the east, was the Persian or the Parthian Empire, which was beginning to encroach upon the Roman territory. And to lose Judea would be to lose a bulwark against the Parthian Empire. So they knew they had to make an example of Judea. They chose their best general, a Spanish bullfighter named Vespasian, took their best legion, the 10th Legion out of France, put them on boats and sailed them to Phoenicia. They got off the boat in Phoenicia, marched down the coastline, murdering and pillaging and raping and stealing all the way down. They got to Jaffa, made a left turn, came up into the hillsides, came to the city of Jerusalem on Shvar Sar B'Tammuz, on the 17th day of Tammuz, which is last month. They broke through the walls of Jerusalem, and on the 9th day of Av, today, They destroyed the Holy Temple. To give you a sense of how bitter the fight was, anyone ever been to Jerusalem? Raise your hand if you've been to Jerusalem. Good, hands down. How long does it take to walk from the Jaffa Gate to the Kotel, even on a crowded day? 10 minutes. It took the Romans 3 weeks to fight that fight. It took them 3 weeks from breaching the walls to get to the Kotel. Imagine how bitter the fight was in the streets of Jerusalem. Okay? They got to the Kotel, they got to the temple, and they did something very un-Roman. They destroyed the Holy Temple. Now, why did they? Romans don't destroy temples. You don't do that. You always respect the local cult. It's ironic that a pagan is multicultural. Only a monotheist will kill you for your religion. Think about that for a while. But this was a particular problem because the Temple of Jerusalem had become an identified political symbol. And they had to destroy it in order to show the Jews that Rome prevails. So they destroyed the temple. Now imagine what that looked like in the eyes of the survivors. Everything that was sacred and holy happened in that building. First of all, that building had been there for 1,000 years. Those of you who grew up in the valley like I did, anything built before 1970 is old architecture. If you live in Boston, old buildings were there from 1680. If you live in England, old buildings, New College, Oxford was built in the 14th century. This had been there 1,000 years. Built by Solomon, destroyed by the Babylonians, rebuilt by Ezra and Nehemiah, remodeled by Herod, 1,000 years. And it was the most beautiful building in the ancient world. The most beautiful, a cube of marble with a beautiful golden parapet across the top, a triple colonnade around the patio. It was a marvelous, magnificent building, and the Romans destroyed it all. And in the middle of that room, in the middle of that building was a room called the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the inner sanctum, where Jews believed God lived, or at least God had an office. Nobody went in there because God lived there. The only person who ever went into the Kodesh HaKodeshim was the high priest on Yom Kippur. And he spent a month fasting and learning so that he could concentrate on the welfare of the community before he entered that dangerous room. And just in case the poor guy should drop dead in the middle of the ritual, just before he went in, they tied a rope around his leg. In case he died, they could schlep him out, and no one else would. That's to risk their life. God lived in that room. And all of a sudden, on an afternoon in July of the year 70, it's all gone. The temple's destroyed. The most devastating moment in all of Jewish history up to the Holocaust. I think the Holocaust exceeds it, but that's another lecture. The most devastating moment, the moment God was banished from the world. The moment our city ceased to become the center of all life. The moment the holiest building, the most powerful symbol of Jewish unity and identity, was destroyed. And the rabbis, as they watched this happen, they asked the question, why? Why did God let this happen? Why did this happen to us? What can we learn from this? And they spent, like typical rabbis, they spent 300 years thinking about this. And after 300 years, they wrote a story. They wrote a story. And they put it in Talmud Gittin, which is ironic, because Talmud Gittin is all about divorces. Sort of interesting, right? And I gave it to you. It's all here. So what I did is I broke this up into paragraphs, into scenes, as if it were a movie script, right? This is apologies to Rabbi Rothblum, who's the greatest dramatist in the world, at least in Hebrew, right? So we can take a look at this together. And now this is being written 300 years later. This is Rabbi Yochanan, who's not 300. Rabbi Yochanan is the generation after the destruction. But the whole text is put together 300 years later, out of disparate parts. So 300 years later, they're asking this question, why? Why did it happen? Or better yet, what can we learn? Now, I wanted to say one last thing before we jump into the text. Anything that might seem remotely political is your problem, not mine. This is not meant to be political. I'm not talking about America. I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about ancient Palestine. Is that clear? If you think it's political, you go home and complain to your rabbi. Rabbi Yochanan taught. What illustrates the verse? This is typical rabbinic. Typical rabbinic, when you want to give a drasha, you find some obscure verse in the back of the Bible and show how your story is attached to it. So he starts with a verse from Mishlei, which is a book that nobody ever read in confirmation class, right? Happy is the man who fears always, but he that hardens his heart shall fall into mischief. And then Rabbi Yochanan says, because of a kamsa and a bar kamsa, Jerusalem was destroyed. What? What's a kamsa and what's a bar kamsa? Act 1, scene 1. A certain man had a friend named Kamsa. And he had an enemy named Bar Kamsa. Did everybody get that? He had a friend named John and the enemy named Johnson. Is that clear? Jack, Jackson, Robert, Robertson. He had a friend, and they had similar names. He once made a party. He had a bar mitzvah for his kid, right? And he said to the servant, go and bring Kamsa, who is my friend. The man went and brought Bar Kamsa, who was his enemy. Now the question I want you to think about from is, why did Bar Kamsa come to the party if the guy's his enemy? Just keep that in mind for a moment. When he, who gave the party, found him, Bar Kamsa, there, right? So the host is circulating through the room, collecting gifts for his kid and wishing everyone, thank you for coming to my kid's bar mitzvah. And there, standing at the bar, drinking a margarita, is the guy he hates most in the world, Bar Kamsa, right? And he says to him, what the hell are you doing here? What are you doing here? Right? Get out! I hate you. You're my enemy. Get out. So they have a long history, these two guys. We don't know what it is. We just know that there's enmity between them, right? Now, why do you think Bar Kamsa came to the party to begin with? Why would a guy receiving an invitation to somebody's bar mitzvah, somebody that he can't stand, somebody they've had history, maybe it's been bad business history, or they're bad neighbors, or he made a scene in shul once, God knows. They hate each other. Why would he come to the guy's bar mitzvah party? All right, he could. Thank you, Bruce. He came to annoy him. Could be. Think more generously for a moment. Yes, please. Yes, you get invited to his bar mitzvah. Maybe on the occasion of his child's simcha, he wants to make peace. He wants to make peace, right? The Godfather's daughter gets married in the first scene of the movie, right? And everybody comes to make peace, even the dons that he doesn't get along with, who are going to try to kill him a few minutes, later in the movie. You know what I'm talking about? For those of you not members of Valley Beth Shalom, go watch the Godfather trilogy. It's the most important commentary on the Torah ever written since Rashi. Right? The dons all came to Corleone's wedding, right? Because they think it's a peace gesture. So he comes to the party and he's feeling wonderful. That the enemy wants to make peace. We'll shake hands. We'll get over it. We'll put aside the grudge. And as he's standing at the bar, he sees the host coming at him, and he's thinking, oh, here is the chance. Bury the hatchet. Put away the enmity. We'll make peace. And he extends his hand, and the host says to him, you son of a bitch, get out of my house. Now, that's a pretty radical turn of expectation, wouldn't you say? But this is in front of the whole community. So the other, Bar Kamsa, who's the offended one, says, look, I'm here. Don't kick me out. Let me stay. It's humiliating to be kicked out. I will pay for whatever I eat and drink. Right? I'll pay for it. I don't want you to pay for my meal. Just let bygones be bygones and don't humiliate me in the eyes of the community. The host says, no, get out. He said, let me give you half the cost of the party. I'll pay half the cost of the party. Just don't humiliate me. The host says, no, get out. He says, let me pay for the whole party. We didn't have our caterer. That's I will pay for the whole affair. Just don't humiliate me in the midst of this celebration, right? And the host still refused, took him by the hand, and threw him out. Threw him out. Since the other. Said Bar Kamsa. Now, who is he talking to? Said Bar Kamsa to himself. So now the text is going to interpret his motives. Since the rabbis were sitting there and didn't stop him, this shows that they agreed with him. I will go and inform against them to the Roman government. Now, how do the rabbis know? How do the rabbis who wrote this story know what Bar Kamsa was thinking? They don't. All they know is he went to the Roman government. Right? So they're interpreting what really happened. There could be many different motives involved here, right? Who is ultimately at fault for this catastrophe blowing up the whole community? The rabbis. They blame themselves. They blame themselves. Now think about this a minute. Bar Kamsa's not even angry at the guy for kicking him out. I mean, he's humiliated. But the thing that angers him most is that the community leadership was sitting in the room and didn't stop it. In other words, what are the rabbis doing? The rabbis are blaming themselves. This is a failure of our leadership. Why was God expelled from the world? Because we failed. We rabbis, we failed. And what did we fail at? Now you step back a second and say, wait a minute. There's a dreadful dissymmetry here. You're talking about the destruction of the Holy Temple, and you're talking about an event in a bar mitzvah party? My God, how many bar mitzvah parties have we gone to where horrible things happen, right? What's the dissymmetry here? But it can't be just a bar mitzvah party. It represents something much deeper. What was happening in the community? What was happening in the community is a breakdown of civil relationships. The inability of people to respect each other. The inability of people to live with each other. The inability of people, and this is within the city of Jerusalem, to understand each other. They get into these fights, these grudges, and they pass their grudges from generation to generation to generation. You get these big arguments. The complete tearing of a social fabric. What the rabbis are trying to say is that within the city of Jerusalem, even before the temple was destroyed, something equally holy had been destroyed. The civil unity of the Jewish people. The civil solidarity, the social solidarity of the Jewish people had already been frayed. It had been corrupted. And that's the beginning of kicking God out of the world. And we rabbis, we should have seen it. So how come they didn't stop him? Use your imagination. How come they didn't say something? How come they didn't stop this guy from doing this? By the way, we don't even know his name. You notice that we don't know his name? We know Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. We don't know the host of the party. The guy who is really responsible for the destruction of the Holy Temple, we don't know his name. We don't know his name. But the rabbis blame themselves. Why didn't they stand up and say something? Why not? Tell me something. Why do you think they didn't stand up and say something? They wanted to stay out of it. Why did they want to stay out of it? Didn't they see this was a problem? Aren't rabbis, say what? Money. Ooh, what a beautifully cynical idea. Ooh, tell me about money. What kind of money? Come on. What? Oh, it's better than bribes. You don't need bribes to get rabbis to be quiet, right? He's a big donor. He's a big donor, right? You know big donors. You've heard of them. They live in Vegas hotels. A big donor, right? And you don't want to offend him, because if you offend him, you won't get I see it. It's not right. It shouldn't happen. But you know what? Pass me another one of those little hot dogs. Oh, I didn't even see it happening. Gee. Even great rabbis can be blinded by money. And it's not their money. It's not that they're being bribed. It's that they need the funds to support the community, and they need this guy's support. Could be that. Could be something else. Could be they hated this guy. Could be he pissed off everybody in the community. Could be they couldn't stand him. They didn't want him there either. Could be they just didn't care. Could be they thought that their responsibility is the spiritual well-being of the Jewish people, and the social relationships that happen at a bar mitzvah party, none of their business. Right? My job is prayer and Torah. Your personal ethics don't concern me. Could be that that was their attitude. You can construct a really number of interesting sermons on the basis of this, and I'm sure someone has. Okay? Yes, please. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved and get picked on. Yeah. Imagine that. So what happens next? Act 1, Scene 2. Everybody okay so far? Any questions, comments, counter sermons? Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah, but so their answer is, if I don't get my $50 billion, what shul do you belong to? Right? Right? Anybody from Wilshire Boulevard Temple here? Right? No, I mean, I need the $50 billion because I have kids I want to send to school. I need the $50 billion because I have institutions I want to upkeep. They have good reasons to want donors to give. Rabbis aren't selfish. They're trying to create and sustain a community. They need donors. They need donors. And to get donors, you have to twist yourself in all kinds of ways. And it's one of the great challenges of leadership to know how far you can twist yourself before you've twisted yourself completely out of your own identity. And that's what this is about, at least in that interpretation. It's a very important question, right? You know, what are you willing to have your rabbi do in order to gain the money, and it's money, needed to sustain the community and its programs and institutions? Right? I think it's a really interesting question. Yeah. Right. That would be nice. Sometimes we rabbis do that. And sometimes we get fired for that. Because boards of directors want to know that your job is to help sustain the institution. You just offended the big donor. That's how you get fired. That's one of the ways to get fired as a rabbi. There's about 36 ways. Right? Paul Simon wrote a song about that once, right? 36 ways to leave your synagogue, right? Step out the back, Jack. Make a new plan, Stan. Don't need to be coy, Rabbi Roy. He, Bar Kamsa, went to the Roman governor. And he said to them, the Jews are rebelling against you. Is that true? Was there a rebellion against the Romans? No. That was the one thing you didn't want the Roman governor to hear. How come? The Romans were very, very, very worried about revolution. Why? Because they only had a very small garrison to govern a very large population of Jews. And Romans never understood Jews. First of all, they never got this idea of one God who you can't see. What kind of crazy people worships a God you can't see? Number two, they didn't understand Shabbat. What do you mean every week you take a day off? That's crazy, right? They didn't understand our sensitivity to idolatry. The Roman legions would march through the streets with images of the eagle, and we would tell them that that's idolatrous. And they would say, but that's our symbol. They just didn't get us. And as the Jewish population became more and more militant, the Romans were on a hair trigger. They brought in soldiers. And the community in Jerusalem was worried that if the Romans lost their patience, they would rampage to the streets and murder people. So Bar Kamsa goes to the Roman governor and tells him the one thing we don't want anybody telling him. There's a revolt starting. Fake news. Fake news. Now you understand what this means. What this means is that what the Roman governor thinks he knows and what's really happening is different. And Bar Kamsa is manipulating truth. He is manipulating the news. He is manipulating the facts in order to punish the community that has now humiliated him. Does he think this is going to lead to the destruction of everything? What do you think? What was his thought? What do you think he wanted? Just to step up trouble? Just to make life a little more difficult? What is he thinking? What? It's risky. You're poking the lion. But when you poke a lion, are you really expecting the lion to eat you? I don't know. What does he think's going to happen? Let's see what happens. I know you want to know. He says the Jews are rebelling. He says, how can I tell? That's interesting, but the governor is skeptical enough to say, show me some proof. He said, I'll show you some proof. Send them an offering. See if they'll offer it. Right? Now, you know the geography. The geography is the temple's over here on Harabayit, and the Antonio Fortress, where the governor is over here. It's in the north. And there's a north-south road called the Cardo that connects the two. Right? And there's a restaurant on the Cardo, and next time in Jerusalem, go enjoy it. So what happens? He says, give me, and the Romans would always send offerings down, and the priests of the temple would offer them. It was a sign of respect on both ends. The governor showed respect to the temple by offering an expensive animal, and the temple would offer that offering and pray for the well-being of the empire. Get it? So he says, send them an offering. You'll see what happens, right? So he sent a fine calf, very expensive. And while he was on the way, while the calf was coming down the Cardo toward the temple, he, Bar Kamsa, made a blemish on its upper lip, or the white of its eye, in a place where the Jews count it as a blemish, and they, the Romans, don't. You can't offer a blemished animal on the altar of Jerusalem. So he knows where to make the blemish. So he socks the animal in the face. So there's a blemish, but it's not a blemish that the Romans would have seen as a blemish, but it is a blemish the priests would see. Now there's a dilemma, right? So now the animal arrives, and the priests of the temple go to the rabbis. This is fantasy, because the rabbis didn't control the temple. And they ask the rabbis, should we offer this blemished animal? What's the argument that says, yes, you should offer a blemished animal, even though it's against the law? Why should you do it? Say what? Appeasement. What's the larger Jewish rabbinic principle that appeasement falls into? Shlom bayis, and even more than that, because the Romans could get really nervous and send troops into the city and hurt people. Pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh is the ruling by which you can set aside most of the laws of the Torah in order to protect life and well-being. In other words, there's an escape clause in every rabbinic ruling. If it's going to threaten the well-being of people, back out, don't do it. Do the other thing. Offer the damn animal. No one's going to know anyway. And you'll save the community a lot of bloodshed. So the rabbis were inclined to offer it. Not to offend the Roman government. Up steps Rab Zachariah ben Abkulis. Now the interesting thing is this guy doesn't appear anyplace else in the Talmud. This is a one-time shot. Up steps Rab Zachariah ben Abkulis and says to them, people will say that blemished animals are offered on the altar. Oh, my God. What is it? What kind of political argument is people will say? People are going to say that the rabbis are lax in their observance of the Torah. People will say that that it's a slippery slope from this to complete idolatry. I mean, today you offer blemished animals, tomorrow you're worshiping Zeus, right? People will say that the rabbis aren't real kosher. They're not Torah true. They're not fully observant of the laws and traditions. People will say... What does that tell you? What does people will say? What kind of argument does people will say? That's it. Say that again. They are afraid. The leadership of the community is afraid. They know the right thing to do, but they're afraid of the response of the community. They're afraid for their own reputations. They're afraid that they're going to be accused of lax observance. They're afraid, they're afraid, they're afraid, and they're afraid. And so what do? They say, okay, we won't offer the animal. Why was the temple of Jerusalem destroyed and God banished from the world? Because the leadership of the community was afraid of what people would say. Now, what happens is, when you're afraid of one thing, and you make a and you follow the wrong thing to do, then it leads you to a bigger problem. This was beautifully illustrated by a great group of rabbinic scholars called the Keystone Cops. This is called slapstick. So now they say, okay, so we'll offer the animal, but how will we won't offer the animal, but the only person who could betray us is Bar Kamsa. So they proposed to kill Bar Kamsa. Now, wait a minute. A moment ago, you were talking about offering an animal with a tiny little mum, a tiny little blemish in the white of its eye. And now you're talking about capital murder. This is a little weird, no? Right? But even capital murder in a certain way, now you're not allowed to do pikuach nefesh and do capital murder. That's not allowed. Please don't go home and say that at VBS they do. No. However, you are allowed to save the community. And they're now considering killing the guy? And then up steps Zechariah ben Abkulis and says, is one who made a blemish on a consecrated animal put to death? No, one who betrayed the community and brings holy hell raining down on the community, he might be put to death, but... So they didn't offer the animal, and they didn't kill Bar Kamsa, and Bar Kamsa goes back to the governor and says, see, they're revolting against you. You better send the troops in. And that's the beginning of the end. And Rabbi Yochanan ends his drasha with a sad conclusion. Through the scrupulousness of Rab Zechariah ben Abkulis, our house has been destroyed, our temple burnt, and we ourselves exiled from our land. It wasn't the lax observance of the tradition. On the contrary, it was a blind observance of the tradition. It was a foolish observance of the tradition. It was an observance of the tradition that didn't have in mind at the same time a vision of the political context in which this is taking place. Sometimes being too frum is not good for you. Rabbi Yochanan says that's the reason we lost everything sacred to us. Bruce? No. See, that's the point. The priests are the ones who really control the temple, but this is 300 years later, and the rabbis are imagining that they were in charge. It's just a made-up story. This is not what really happened. I can tell you what really happened. It's not nearly as fun as this. But the rabbis are saying, what lessons can we draw from the destruction for our own conduct of the community? And so they put themselves in charge, and they said, we failed. We failed to protect the social fabric. We failed to speak up when there needed to be spoken up. We failed to see the threat coming. We failed to use our own halachic tools, our own legal tools to protect the community. We observed the law to the letter without any consciousness of the political context in which it was taking place, the social context in which it was taking place. The temple was destroyed because we, rabbis, failed. But that's only the beginning. Now for the next part of the story, Rabbi Yarkin, you're up.
Firstly, just have to acknowledge how fabulous it is to learn with you, Rabbi Feinstein. I've missed you. He helped teach me in rabbinical school. So this was such a pleasure. And I'm just going to keep this short and sweet, pass the mic afterwards to Sari, and then back to you because you'll bring it home. We have arrived at Act 2, Scene 1, which we are imagining follows after this setting, because there is now a siege taking place. The Roman emperor has sent Vespasian, who has besieged Jerusalem for 3 years. And you know, a siege is not quite a hot war. It's the process whereby battalions, generals, have surrounded the city and are denying merchants the ability to bring in food or export goods. So they're trying to slowly starve the people out and have the people surrender. So it's a brutal military strategy that the rabbis are going to feel very strongly about. We have the setup that the people are going to be able to survive for 21 more years, I'm assuming. We're introduced to 3 wealthy men, Nakdimon ben Gurion, ben Kulba Shabua, and ben Zizith Hakeseth, and each of them declare to the Jerusalemites, "We will keep you going, guys. I have wheat and barley," says one. Another has wine, oil, and salt, and another has wood, the staples that will keep the people thriving for 21 years, meaning the tactic of the siege could stay in place, and the Romans might fizzle out. Because, as we heard, they are small in number. They don't have many people on the ground of Jerusalem. They're trying to rule the entire world. So maybe they will get bored and walk away and give us back our town. However, the zealots were in the city. This is the first time that our word zealots appears in this context. And by the way, it's an interesting word that shocked me when I did research on this, because the following few stories that are going to use this word, I heard these stories differently when I was younger. I was just told that these were Romans themselves. They are often translated as palace guards, birioni. But these birioni were then in the city. And the rabbis approach these zealots, and the rabbis say, "Let us go out and make peace with the Romans." So I would imagine that what that would look like would be, "We will stop the siege, we will stay loyal to you. We promise, pinky swear, that we are no longer going to rebel. And let's just bring things back to normal. We will allow you to be our sovereign, essentially, but please let us do our own thing, and we will stop being troublemakers." So the rabbis are stepping up and attempting to end the siege. The zealots, however, true to their name, do not like this approach. They say the opposite. "No, let us make war against them." Not satisfied with the siege and just hoping that one side will wear the other side out. Sorry, there's kind of feedback, which is irksome. The zealots want to try to rise up and win, conquer the Romans, throw them out. I don't know if that comes from a good-hearted place. If by zealots we mean they were God-fearers, they were true believers, and they assumed that Hashem would be on their side, then maybe this is a courageous act, and maybe the rabbis should have allowed that. I mean, we know from later and later and later that we lose every significant battle trying to defend the temple from this time onwards. So maybe as a military strategy, this was suicide. Either way, the rabbis do not want this to happen. They say you will not succeed. And I don't know if that's because, as we've just heard, the rabbis at this stage are full of fear. Remember that they didn't even really exist 300 years prior. This is their fantasy, them reimagining the story and giving themselves the role of saying, "No, calm down. We don't want to lose blood. We're happy to continue with the siege, or, if preferable, we will surrender to the Romans." So really, depending on how you feel about that, I don't know who to cast as the goodies and the baddies. It might be more nuanced than that. What we do feel is that the zealots are hotheads and extremists, and the rabbis are fearful, cautious, and willing to give power back to the Romans. And then something really despicable occurs. Because again, when I was a young, innocent, naive little girl, I heard that the Romans were the baddies in this story, and that the poor Jewish people were oppressed and terrified. And it's not as simple as that, because it is the zealots that rise up and force the hands of everyone because they sabotage the food supply. They burn the stores of wheat and barley, and a famine ensues, which will cause desperation. And again, it depends on how you translate the word zealots, but in this text we have the idea that they're Jews, that they're super pious Jews. But again, you can hear this story as them being palace guards, which, again, we have Jewish palaces, but on the same measure, it could also have been, and I've heard this story kind of sanitized, that no, these were different Romans. These are the officials, the Romans that said, no, we won't allow this. Again, it's quite distressing. And now we have an anecdote, which I truly believe is reverse engineering. The rabbis have a couple of fabulous quotes that they want to see come to pass. But here is a really disturbing story. We have Martha, the daughter of Boethius, who was a very rich lady in Jerusalem, and she would send her servant to the marketplace for her. And she asked, "Bring me some fine flour." The servant goes out, but the fine flour was sold out. And he returns to her and says, "No fine flour, there is only white flour left." She says, "Please bring me some of that then." It's sold out. He returns, "I'm sorry, they are all out. There is dark flour though." Again, at this point you think, why didn't the servant at this stage see the pattern and just buy whatever flour was there? But no, we need to have a tragic story here. So the third time the servant says, no dark flour, he returns empty-handed, sold out, and there is barley flour. "Bring me some barley flour," nada. So, after a ridiculous cycle of storytelling, she has taken off her shoes and she says, "I will go out and see if I can find something to eat." Just that in itself is curious. Why does she choose to snap then? Where are her shoes? I don't understand. Because if you're going to go out, surely you'd put your shoes on, and she is introduced as one of the richest women in Jerusalem. This is where I think the reverse engineering is going to come in, because our quote is going to picture a shoeless woman. So, but again, if someone else can suggest why she chooses this route, please let me know. But let's finish what happens to this poor old dear. Some dung stuck to her foot, and she died. What a terrible ending. I looked this up because I was amazed and astounded. One of my favorite responses to what that even means is that she died from the shock. It's just painting a picture of how luxurious her life must have been, that she never ventured into the dung piles that were in the public, and that there's the thought of, for the first time ever, being in contact with dung caused her to faint and die. Another interpretation is that, well, maybe her feet had a cut, that it got infected, it died, it passed away. She's not going to die immediately, because she's going to then get to do one last gesture as she is dramatically dying. She's going to fling her money away, again, to make the quote true. But I think what we see, at least from this story, is dire poverty. We see that the food sources have dried up. Even one of the wealthiest women in Jerusalem, someone who is so shocked at dung, she passes out and dies. She now is destitute. She is hungry. She can find zero food, even for all the money that she has. That's kind of painting this dire picture. And who is it that caused this picture? This is the Zealots. And who was unable to change the mind of the Zealots? The rabbis, who were clearly in communication with our Zealots. I don't know if it's worth reading all the quote out aloud, but again, it kind of summarizes that we have been devoured, that there's no grain, wine, or oil left, and she who is most tender and dainty amongst you, she would never venture to set foot on the ground, shall begrudge the husband, and because of utter want in desperate states to which your enemy shall reduce you in your towns, you will be destroyed. The quote itself has a woman who is shoeless and had been dainty once and is now downtrodden. So that's our Martha. That's, I think, where the rabbis can imagine that story. And it's pitiful. And it's a prelude to some of the scenes of desolation we're going to read in Eicha, of widows and orphans and mothers and children, from the wealthiest to the dregs of society, suffering and famished. But what's heartbreaking is to see that the famine wasn't caused, at least at first, by the Romans besieging the city. We had food for 21 years. It would have been potentially okay, and the rabbis had prescribed peace or negotiation or a surrender. And it all goes wrong because of meticulousness, firmness, no, we must war, or self-sabotage. The zealots take the food away. And that's crossed the line from squabbling, from behaving badly, to insanity. That's cutting off your nose to spite your face. So again, that's just deepened our level now of what has gone wrong with this society, that this has happened, and how shameful that we're bringing this on ourselves, that it wasn't just a cut and dry, the Romans are the bad guys. Just like with the Hanukkah story, that it's much more nuanced. It's actually about, Hellenized Jewish people versus the religious fanatics who don't enjoy the idea of anyone else embracing a foreign culture. Any thoughts or questions on this in this second act so far? All righty then. Rabbi, do we have time for Act 2, Scene 2? Okay. This is a classic one. This is Abba Sikra, the head of the Zealots in Jerusalem, the son of the sister of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So ben Zakkai is his uncle. And Rabban Yochanan, who is a big deal, talks with him. And he says, hey, how long are you going to carry on in this way and kill all the people with starvation? And Abba Sikra, again, concerned about other peoples, what they're going to feel, what they're going to do. He says, what can I do? If I say a word to them, the zealots will kill me. He doesn't know that as a fact, by the way. It's his fear. It's perception. I don't want to seem like a traitor, and I'm under the influence of powerful minds. And Yochanan ben Zakkai says, please help get me out of here. And Abba Sikra asks, what does he say? Devise some plan for me to escape, and I may be able to save a little. And Abba Sikra saves the day. He comes up with this wonderful plan: pretend to be ill, let everyone come to inquire about you, then bring something foul-smelling, and because there's plenty of dung around in this story, and then we're going to fake your death. This is an exciting scene. We're going to essentially smuggle you out as a corpse. And some of your students will be there with you underneath. And again, not quite sure why. But when the guards, they will let you out. And there's extra drama here. This was clearly an oral tale at first, because the guard gates want to spear the body. Maybe just to check. Maybe just to let out some violence. I'm not sure, but of course they say, look, this is the master. Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the famous leaders at the time. You don't want to desecrate the dead body of our master and pierce him, or push him. So they open the gates and they let him out, and that will be crucial, of course, because he is going to be able to beg for Yavna. And this is interesting, because we have in here a zealot who's willing to help their uncle. There is a shard, a fracture of hope here, that human decency wins the day. This is a story that a bunch of you have heard, correct? Because it's one of the famous ones. And yes, it's pretty stunning that this is what goes on. One thing that, again, to me is interesting is the guard gates. Do you think the guard gates are Roman, or are they zealots? Right. They are most likely the zealots. You've got the siege going on around them and behind them, but on the inside, letting people in and out, are the zealots themselves. So what that's saying is, again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is not smuggled out to protect him from the Romans, and that it would have been the Romans who would have had a crazy problem with him leaving, although they are going to. The zealots themselves do not want this rabbi to leave, this hero of the Jewish people. So again, we see this real discomfort of religious Jews being the cause of the violence, being the enemy at this stage. Not every Jew is the enemy here, but just like we saw in Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, it's Jew against Jew, and then lack of leadership being able to come in and pacify or save the day. We're looking at a fractured community that is at war with itself, and the Romans are merely there hoping it won't get worse. Next scene.
Apparently you're supposed to look at each other's elbow and you never miss. I just learned that. Fun fact. So I just want to frame, we're about to go into Act 2, Scene 3. Also a pretty well-known scene, sort of the denouement of this part, I would say, of the story. And I just sort of want to frame with a couple of questions that I think that have been playing out and continue to play out. I think, like, overarching question in this text, at least, that the rabbis, again, who are rewriting history, right, and writing themselves into history, something they enjoy doing in general, they are, I think they are asking and are sort of obsessed with the question of who is responsible for the destruction of the temple. And, I think most of us would answer from conditioning or learning or how we, right, was the Romans, right? The Romans destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple, but that's not the story that the rabbis want to tell necessarily. And they are really focused on this question of who is the individual who is responsible for destroying the temple, or who are the people. And so we start with this idea that it's this guy Bar Kamsa, right? It's him. If he hadn't gotten so upset about being denied his baby lamb chops, then, the temple would still be standing and we'd all be living a very different life, right? That's sort of argument number one. And then the second argument comes along and says it's the rabbi whose name I don't actually know because he only appears this once. Was it right? Zechariah ben Abkulis, right? It's now it's his fault. Because if he had just, looked the other way right? In the beginning, the problem is that the rabbis do look the other way. And then in the second scene, this idea, like if he had just looked the other way and just let us sacrifice this bull, like it could have been okay. And again, the temple would be standing. And then we bring in, and I also, I've read this text a bunch of times, but a lot of my text, I couldn't find all of my notes, and I realized I don't know that I'd ever read it. That when trying to smuggle Yochanan ben Zakkai out, that we were trying to smuggle him away from the Zealots, right? You always read it. And I just finished, there's an Israeli novel called The Orchard, which is a dramatic, historical fiction retelling of this time. And there is more of the sort of inter-Jewish play that's happening. But when you read the story traditionally, or when you learn it, it's sort of like, oh, they needed to get him out of the city because of the Roman siege, whereas here we're sort of reading like, no, maybe it's actually because of the Zealots, right? So they're brought in as like, now they're the cause of it. Because if they had just let us go and make peace with the Romans, things would have gone to status quo. So now we come to, like I said, this sort of denouement of this section that now Yochanan ben Zakkai is out of Jerusalem. He's outside of the siege, at least. He's outside of the city walls, and he goes to Vespasian, who knows who he is, right? There were relationships, and that the head of, he wasn't actually the head of the rabbis at the time because they didn't exist, but in this imagination that the head of the Jewish people in Jerusalem would have had a relationship with the Roman governor, without a doubt. So when Yochanan reaches the Romans, he says to him, which is a little bit risque, I would argue, peace to you, O king, right? Not your typical Jewish greeting to another sovereign, but okay. And Vespasian responds, not how you would expect, with like, how are you, or thank you so much for visiting, or how are any of that. He says, your life is sort of tenuous on two counts now. First, I'm not actually a king. And right, I'm not the emperor, I'm just one of the generals. Like, you're elevating me beyond my station because you are calling me king. And then the second being, dude, if I was a king, why is this the first time you're coming to me? If I'm so powerful and so important, why haven't you come to me beforehand? And Yochanan ben Zakkai says, well, in truth, you must be a king, because if you are not, Jerusalem would not be delivered into your hand, which is sort of like showing his own hand, right? We don't know yet that Jerusalem will be delivered into the Roman hands. So there's this sort of like, can Yochanan ben Zakkai see into the future? He knows something that maybe even Vespasian doesn't. And the second piece, if you are a king, why didn't I come to you till now? Well, because the zealots wouldn't let me, right? So now he's selling out his own nephew, part one, but he's also saying, like, it wasn't my choice. I think he is trying to sort of write his agenda into this of, like, if it was up to me, if it was up to the people with whom I'm in contact, we would have come to you, right? We would have, this wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have let it get this far. And Vespasian says, so if there's a jar of honey around which a serpent is wound, wouldn't you break the jar to get rid of the serpent? So when I read this a couple of times, tell me, what's the jar of honey in this scenario? I heard it. Someone said it. The jar of honey, right, is, sure. I asked what the jar of honey is, that he uses this metaphor of that there's a jar of honey with a snake wound around it. And I heard, right, that the jar of honey that Vespasian is talking about is Jerusalem and or the temple. I think they are probably synonymous with one another, but the place. And here, who's the serpent? Right, we all answer now because we've now read through the zealots. I will tell you that probably the first time I read it, even the second time I read it, I had to stop myself, right? Because I'm thinking, wait, but aren't the Romans the serpent? They are literally wound around the city of Jerusalem in this moment. And so I had this moment of, like, Vespasian is sort of asking Yochanan, why didn't you attack us? But I think the zealot reading makes it make a little bit more sense. But I think there is this tension, and it's sort of a classic. It plays out in our history it plays out in this history in a lot of different ways. This tension of, why didn't you do something earlier, right? Whether it was zealots or whether it was the Romans, if it was the temple and Jerusalem that you're trying to free or trying to protect, what could you have done something, I think, is this question. And Yochanan is silenced. He has no answer. Shocking, right, for a rabbi. Has no answer, has no comment. And so then Rabbi Yosef, or some would say Rabbi Akiva, so another of the great scholars, applies to Rabbi Yochanan. This is not the nicest inter-rabbinic dialogue I've ever heard. The verse, God turns the wise backward and makes their knowledge foolish. Meaning, you have this super smart guy, right, Yochanan ben Zakkai. He's the head of he's sort of the Av Beit Din of their time. You got nothing to say. You can't come up with anything. You know Torah backwards and forwards. You can't find one verse to answer Vespasian. And with hindsight being 2020, Rabbi Yosef or Rabbi Akiva is like, you should have just looked. Here's the obvious answer. You should have said, we take a pair of tongs and grip the snake and kill it and leave the jar intact. Meaning either Yochanan ben Zakkai should have said to Vespasian, you go in and kill the zealots and everything will be fine. I think is the underlying thing here. So now's the dramatic moment. So at this point, right, perfect timing, a messenger comes to Vespasian from Rome and says, arise, the emperor is dead and the notables of Rome have elevated you. You're now going to be the emperor. So sure enough, Yochanan ben Zakkai was right in greeting him as, O king. And Vespasian turns to Yochanan and goes, I got to go. They're calling me back to Rome. Someone, I'm sure fantastic, will come and take my place. But make a request of me and I will grant it. So now all of a sudden Vespasian is the genie. We watch a lot of Aladdin in my house right now, so it's not quite as highbrow as The Godfather, but that's where we are. So, you get one wish. So I'm putting this out to you. You are now Yochanan ben Zakkai. You have just been snuck out of Jerusalem. You are standing in front of Vespasian. What is your one wish? He says, you can ask one request and I will grant it. So pretend you don't know, right? Don't read ahead. What do you think he would ask? Oh, good, right? One request, go away. Go deal with the rest of your problems in the rest of the world and leave us alone. So sort of the request for for freedom or even just status quo, right? That's one. Anything else? I'm going to put out there the other request could be not go away because that's not going to happen, but just give us Jerusalem, give us back Jerusalem. Take away the threat. Maybe end the siege. You can stay, but we'll go back to the status quo, and keep us and our place safe. Right? Those are the things that I might think that I would ask if I was Yochanan ben Zakkai. In fact, it is not what he asks, right? Yochanan ben Zakkai looks at him and says, give me Yavna and its scholars, Yavna being a seat of Jewish learning outside of Jerusalem that was not as prominent yet at this point, but becomes so. Give me the family chain of Rabban Gamliel, and one other random request not here, which is give me healing for Rabbi Tzadok, just one of the scholars who is ill. Right, so these are the things that he asked for. Yavna, the place, the family chain of Rabban Gamliel, who will ultimately become the head of the Sanhedrin. He'll become the head of Yavna. And healing for this other guy who we don't know a lot about. And, I want to posit these three requests, again, because we've been talking about the interpersonal, the intercommunal, and the intracommunal, that is the way he frames his requests, right? His first request, this healing request, is totally personal, right? Whether or not Rabbi Tzadok recovers or not, no real impact on the political situation, so that's number one. Preserving the dynasty of Rabban Gamliel is somewhere in between, right? There's been a lot of scholarship trying to figure out the relationship between Yochanan ben Zakkai and Gamliel, but on the one hand, that seems a very personal request, right? Just keep this family's dynasty, let them keep their line, but also is a communal request because Rabban Gamliel will become important for the community. And then the third, Yavne, is the deeply communal request, right? Because it's not just give us this place of learning. It is, especially when the rabbis are rewriting it, right? It's give us our system of Judaism, give us another spiritual center, give us something that will let us survive and thrive without what we've always known. Which seems like a beautiful request until Rabbi Yosef, or again, some say Rabbi Akiva, once again applied to him the verse, God turns the wise backward and makes their knowledge foolish, because what should he have said? Release Jerusalem this time. And before I get to the final line, I want to posit that I think there's also just, again, because of the rabbinic political aspirations or because of the rabbinic theology, I think Yochanan ben Zakkai is really placing the enterprise of Jewish life over the centrality of Jerusalem, right? That he feels like, okay, we are at a turning point, and it feels like either we can have Jerusalem, but who knows what's going to happen in Jerusalem, or we can have some sort of Jewish survival, and he's caught in this moment, and there are those who would say, no, it's all about Jerusalem. If we don't have Jerusalem, we have nothing. And he's saying, no. If we don't have a future, we have nothing. And so he makes the choice and the gamble and all of those things to say, give us the future, and we'll see what happens. And so Rabbi Yochanan's answer to his critics here is, I didn't think he would give us as much as Jerusalem. That seemed like too big an ask. And so I asked for this other thing so that even the smallest remnant would be saved. And so that's sort of where he is, of how do you choose what that priority is. If you can't have it all, what's the one that gives you the best chance to move forward?
We'll finish quickly now because it's time to read. One more paragraph. I'll let you read the rest of this. Everything on the next 2 pages is rabbinic pornography. The rabbis wonder, what happened to the Romans who destroyed the temple? And they have this wonderfully perverse imagination about a migraine headache. It's great stuff. But the last scene I want to read is the one at the bottom of the page, Act 2, Scene 4. We've talked about the reasons for the destruction of Jerusalem in terms of the failure of communal leadership. The failure of the rabbis to protect the social fabric, the failure of the rabbis to understand the political context in which religious decisions are made, the failure of the rabbis to control the zealots in the town, the failure of the zealots' own commanders to control the zealots. Then we talked about this amazing existential moment when Yochanan ben Zakkai stands before Vespasian, and Vespasian says, I'll give you anything you want. What do you want? I'll give you anything you want. What do you want? And as the Rabbi Sari said, he could have said, I want the city. I want my temple. I want my people. But he makes a radical choice. He turns his back on the city, turns his back on the temple, turns his back on everything that is material, and he says, give me Yavne. Give me a school where Torah can be taught, and give me the scholars. Give me the spiritual tradition, uprooted from the physical infrastructure of Jerusalem and the sovereignty of a state. And this is the moment that Jews left history. You understand? This is the moment when Yochanan ben Zakkai says, give me Yavne. From that moment until 1948, Jews never owned a piece of property in the world that was sovereign Jewish country. We left sovereignty. We left political history. We left land. We created a people who would float on the politics of history, maintaining an identity as a spiritual people, as a faith community. That was the critical decision, as the rabbi said, a decision to protect the people from the exigencies of politics, from the ups and downs of empires and kingdoms and states, in order to protect the integrity and protect the identity of this people. That's why Jerusalem was destroyed. But the rabbis want to ask one more question. That's what we did. How about them? Why the Romans? Why were the Romans so intent on destroying Jerusalem? The Romans are really smart guys. To destroy a whole city, to destroy a whole temple is politically foolish because it makes you enemies. And it's strategically foolish because Jerusalem's a great city. And they come up with this remarkable image at the bottom of the page. Vespasian sent Titus. And Titus said, and Titus quotes the Torah. Now, again, that tells you this is a rabbinic story. This is not history. In the rabbinic imagination, Titus knows Torah. And Titus quotes Deuteronomy, where is their God, the rock in whom they trusted? Which comes at the very end of the Torah. It's the last song that Moses sings to his people. It's the song of the exiles. And it comes clear that what Titus intended to do is not a political act of destroying an enemy or destroying a rebellious colony. Titus went to war against God. Titus wanted to go to war against God. And if you imagine this as symbolic of something bigger, it means that the Roman Empire, the great Roman Empire, went to war against the God of the Jews. Which explains why Yochanan chose Yavne. Because it wasn't the temple he was trying to save, it was God. And if you vest God in a physical building, you will never withstand the military might of the Romans. But if you vest God in a community of scholars and a community of Torah, the Romans can't touch you. Why were the Romans so intent on destroying this city? Because they wanted to destroy God. And then go one more step. If the Romans are the greatest empire in all of the antiquity, it isn't just the Romans who are at war with God, it's humanity which is at war with God. The picture you get at the end of this text is the ultimate world war. Man against God. Man doesn't want to live in a world where there's a God who tells you what's right and wrong. Man wants to be God. So Titus enters the Holy of Holies. He enters the most pure place in the world. The holiest place, the place where God lives. And he intends to show that his power is supreme. So he will desecrate it. He will desecrate it. I mean, this is an adolescent fantasy of like, what's the worst sin you can commit, right? You can eat a ham sandwich on the Bima on Yom Kippur with the sisterhood president, whatever, right? He took a harlot by the hand and entered the Holy of Holies, spread out a scroll of the Sefer Torah. I mean, only a rabbinic imagination. No Roman would understand any of these symbols, right? But you see what the rabbis are trying to say. What is Titus trying to do? He's trying to overtake God. He's trying to supplant God. I'm God. I'm the general. I'm the emperor. I'm going to be God. And he committed a sin on a Sefer Torah in the Holy of Holies with a prostitute, with a harlot. And then he takes his sword, and there's a parochet, there's a curtain that separates the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, the Beis Mikdash. He slashes it, as if to separate to destroy the separation between Kodesh and Chol, between holiness and the rest of the rest of the world, between what is sanctified and the mundane filth of the rest of the world. Because for Titus, that separation drives him crazy. And the tradition is that when he slashed, the curtain began to bleed. And he thought he killed God. And that's how the story ends. He thought he killed God. The Romans went to war against the God of the Jews. Mankind went to war against the God of the Jews. And that war still hasn't finished. Because Hitler thought the same thing. And what did Yochanan want to do? He wanted to retain a place for God in the world. And if that place of sanctity and purity and idealism and righteousness and ethics can't be a building in Jerusalem, let it be wherever Jews gather to learn Torah. And that was his great strategic move. This Tisha B'Av, we have to go back and learn this. Because we're living in an age of the Third Commonwealth. We now have a state. We now have Jerusalem. We have more material power in the world than Jews have ever had in our entire history. And the question is, will we make the same mistakes again? We're going to take 2 minutes, lower the lights, ask you to come and take a Siddur, we'll daven Mariv, and begin the reading of Eicha in just 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, rabbis. Thanks so much. Let's move this out of the way. There are candles, if you'd like to use them to read by. Please do not burn the shul to the ground. It was really hard to come by, and we really don't have the resources to make another one. So please take a candle, but be very careful with them.
Please rise and join us in Mariv. We'll be on 281. If you can see, and if you can't see, trust me. Oh, let's wait just a moment as they get the Siddurim. Let's sing together. Hine matovuma. Everybody, Shevet Achim Gamya. A little more. Hine matovuma noim. Shevet Achim Gamya. Take a breath. Second up. Here we go. Hine matov. Shevet Achim Gamya Yachad. Hine matov manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Last time. Hine matov manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov manayim shevet achim. We're on 281. Please rise. Ve'hu rachum yichaper avon velo yashchid mirebal ישיבה פה, ולא יאיר כל חמתו, אדוני יושיע, המלך יעננו ויום קורנו, ברכו את אדוני המבורך. Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Vayer. Please be seated. We continue silently. 281, the first paragraph of the Village of Hashem. Bidore Mare Baroy. V'chochma b'zeh shore. V'riyon v'lai. Melech Chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu. Leolam Vayer. Baruch Ata Adonai. Ha'ori v'ravi. Al kiladun ki hem rayenu yerach yomeinu v'imnege yomam v'layla v'avat kol tosim b'menu l'olamim baruch ata Adonai Ohevamo Yisrael 282 Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad silently Vishinam Tulunecha Vidimal Tuvam Shtufe Secho Shout when we sell your death Shout to us for a yell and a vowel. Shout to us so much. Now you and I shall leave a dollar. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אותם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אל אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem 283 middle of the page מלאכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה בני ישראל לכנו שירה ושמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך Vayim Adonai mi kamocha nedar bakodesh no erat yelot o sefel malchut charav enech li Moshe zeil yanu v'yamer Adonai meloch le'olam yivoed v'neman kivat Adonai et Yaakov u'giyolo omiyot chozok mimenu baruch ata Adonai Gol Yisrael ashkivei 284 Shmor et seitenu ve'inu l'chaim v'rishalom yadav yadolam Baruch ata Adonai Shomei Ramu Yisrael lo avad Baruch atu ilinu omen b'yomem Shoichin b'shlof Vayal kol ha'yivlo b'nei b'yonu V'shi'einu v'adinu Eloheinu katibeinu Ki gudulato v'yiseni floisato Baruch atu Elohim Baruch atu Elohim Baruch atu Shachveinu Baruch Ki amarechut shelechai ויתים לו לכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלו אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ויעל כל מעשיו יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, וילמד ימלך חירותי וימלך מלכותך יחיו ויחנו וחיינו בית ישראל, בגלה וזמן קריב ימירו אמן, יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולם היום. יתבורך וישתבח ויתפאר ויזרום מנסי ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה על שמי דקודשה וריחו לעולם במקום בחדה ויראתה תושבחדה ונחמתה דמירון בעולמה ויאמרו אמן. Silently 286. Allah sadiki vel hazir Esse não duvidado com isso assim. Kaddish 294, we leave out the Titkava. Idgala Yara Shmei Rabba. Biolma de Vela de Viam Bahra Yechnu Yechnu Khayr of Israel. Vagala is man Kodiv Yimeru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach. Ola Ola Meyor Maya. Yishtabah bidluar bidroman sebila dal vidal shmei de kudsha verichu leila mikro vegad v'shiratu shukhat v'rachamatu daviron b'yom avimeru amen. Hey shlomo rabba mishmaya v'chaim alinu v'al Yisrael v'meru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav uyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru.
Please be seated now. We'd like to ask those who are reading Echa to please come forward to the steps behind me here. And everyone is invited to close the prayer books, put them down, but don't put them on the floor, please. There are copies of the book of Echa up in the front here. Please take one. This is the JPS translation. We'll be using a different translation during the reading as well. So those who are reading, please come forward. It doesn't matter. Any translation is fine. You guys have chapter 1, right? The second microphone, in case Tisha B'Av, the tradition begins with the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem in 586 BCE by the Babylonians. The book of Eicha, the book of Lamentation, is one of the short books at the end of the Hebrew Bible, and it's an eyewitness account of the destruction of the city. If you imagine the prophet Jeremiah, who had spent an entire lifetime warning of the coming of destruction, asking the people to repent, and finally he is thrown into prison because he's a traitor to the king and his court. The Babylonians come and they destroy the city, and they release Jeremiah. And if you imagine Jeremiah, who had grown up his entire lifetime in Yerushalayim, walking the streets of a desolate city, walking the streets of a city destroyed, there are still bodies, there's still blood, there's still smoke and ash, and walking up to the center of the city, which is the Temple Mount. That's the setting of this book. The first 2 chapters take us on that walk. The third chapter is a plaintive personal cry of the prophet about the desolation of his soul. And then chapters 4 and 5 return to the theme of the desolation of the city of Jerusalem. Chapter 1, please.
העיר רבת ים הייתה כאלמנה רבתי וגויים שרתי במדינות הייתה למס בכה תבכה בלילה ודמעתה על לחיה אין לה מנחם מכל אוהביה קוראת בגדולה כל בראיה בגדולה היו לה לאויבים גלתה יהודה מעוני ומרוב עבודה היא ישבה בגויים לא מצאה מנוח כל רודפיה השיגוה בין המצרים דרכי ציון אבלות מבלי באי מועד כל שעריה שוממים כהניה נאנחים בתולותיה נוגות והיא מלאה היו ארצה לראש אוהביה שאלו כי אדוני הוגה על רוב פשעיה עולליה הלכו שבי לפני צר ויצא מבת ציון כל הדרה היו שריה כעל ילים לא מצאו מרעה וילכו ולא כוח לפני רודף זכרה ירושלים ימי אשר היו ממקדם בנפול עמה ביצר ואין עוזר לה ראו הצרים שחקו על משפטיה חטא חטאה ירושלים על כן לנידה הייתה כל מרחדיה הזילוה כי ראו ערוותה גם היא נאמכה ותשוב אחור טומאתה בשוליה לא זכרה אחריתה ותרד פלאים אין מנחם לה ראה אדוני את עוני כי הגדיל אויב ידו פרס צר כל מחמדיה כי ראתה גויים באו מקדשה אשר ציוותה לא יבואו בקהל לה כל המנחים מבקשים לכם נתנה מחמדיהם באוהל להשיב נפש ראה אדוני והביטה כי היית זוללה
לא עליכם כל עוברי דרך הביטו וראו אם יש מחוב כמחובי אשר עולה לי אשר הוגה אדוני ביום חרון אפו ממרום שלחה אש בעצמותי וירדנה פרס רשת לרגלי השיבני אחור נתנני שוממה כל היום דבר נזכר כל פשעי בידו יסתרגו עלו על צווארי הכשיל כוחי נתנני אדוני בידי לא אוכל קום סלח כל אבירי אדוני בקרבי קרא עלי מועד לשבור בחורי גת דרך אדוני לבתולת בת יהודה הללב אני בוכייה איני יורדה מים כי רחב מנחם משיב נפשי. היו בניי שוממים, כי גבר אויב. פרסה ציון בידיה, אין מנחם לה, ציווה אדוני ליעקב, סביביו צרה. הייתה ירושלים לנידה ביניהם. צדיקו אדוני כפיהו מריתי, שמעונה כל העמים, וראו מה חובי, בתולותי ובחורי הלכו בשבי. קראתי למהווי, המה רימוני, כהני וזקני בעיר גבהו. כי ביקשו אוכל למו, וישיבו את נפשם. ראה אדוני, כי צר לי, מאי חמרמרו, נפח ליבי בקרבי, כי מרו מריתי, מחוץ שקלה חרב, בבית כמוות. שמעו כי ננחה אני, אין מנחם לי, כל אויבי שמעו רתי, ששו כי אתה עשית. הבאת יום קראת, ויהיו כמוני. תבוא חורתם לפניך, ועולל עמו, כאשר עוללת לי על כל פשעי. כי רבות הנחותי, וליבי דווי.
Chapter 2. How has the Lord covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in his anger? He has cast down from heaven to the earth the beauty of Israel, and hasn't remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. The Lord has swallowed up and has not pitied all the habitations of Jacob. He has thrown down in his wrath the strongholds of the daughter of Judah. He has brought them down to the ground. He has profaned the kingdom and its princes. He has cut off in fierce anger all the horn of Israel. He has drawn back his right hand from before the enemy. He has burned up Jacob like a flaming fire, which devours round about. He has bent his bow like an enemy. He has stood with his right hand as an adversary, has killed all that were pleasant to the eye. In the tent of the daughter of Zion, he has poured out his wrath like fire. The Lord is become as an enemy. He has swallowed up Israel. He has swallowed up all her palaces. He has destroyed his strongholds. He has multiplied in the daughter of Judah mourning and lamentation. He has violently taken away his tent as if it were a garden. He has destroyed his place of assembly. The Lord has caused solemn assembly and Sabbath to be forgotten in Zion, has despised in the indignation of his anger the king and the priest. The Lord has cast off his altar. He has abhorred his sanctuary. He has given up into the hand of the enemy the walls of her palaces. They have made a noise in the house of the Lord, as in the day of a solemn assembly. The Lord has proposed to destroy the wall of the daughter of Zion. He has stretched out the line. He has not withdrawn his hand from destroying. He has made the rampart and wall to lament. They languish together. Her gates are sunk into the ground. He has destroyed and broken her bars. Her king and her princes are among the nations, where the law is not. Also her prophets find no vision from the Lord. The elders of the daughter of Zion sit on the ground. They keep silence. They have cast up dust on their heads. They have girded themselves with sackcloth. The virgins of Jerusalem hang down their heads to the ground. My eyes do fail with tears. My heart is troubled. My liver is poured on the earth because of the calamity of the daughter of my people, because the young children and the infants swoon in the streets of the city. They say to their mothers, where is grain and wine? When they swoon as the wounded in the streets of the city, when their soul is poured out into their mother's bosom. What shall I testify to you? What shall I liken to you, daughter of Jerusalem? What shall I compare to you that I may comfort you, virgin daughter of Zion? For your breach is great as the sea. Who can heal you? Your prophets have seen for you false and foolish visions. They have not uncovered your iniquity to bring back your captivity, but have seen for you false oracles and causes of banishment. All that pass by clap their hands at you. They hiss and wag their head at the daughter of Jerusalem. Is this the city that was called the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole earth? All your enemies have opened their mouth wide against you. They hiss and gnash the teeth. They say, we have swallowed her up. Certainly this is the day that we looked for. We have found, we have seen it. The Lord has done that which he proposed. He has carried out his word that he commanded in the days of old. He has thrown down and has not pitied. He has caused the enemy to rejoice over you. He has exalted the horn of your adversaries. Their heart cried out to the Lord. Wall of the daughter of Zion, let tears run down like a river day and night. Give yourself no respite. Don't let the apple of your eyes cease. Arise, cry out in the night. At the beginning of the watches, pour out your heart like water before the face of the Lord. Lift up your hands toward him. For the life of your young children that faint for hunger at the head of every street. Look, O Lord, and see to whom you have done thus. Shall the women eat their fruit The children that are dandled in the hands shall the priest and the prophet be killed in the sanctuary of the Lord. The youth and the old man lie in the ground in the streets. My virgins and my young men are fallen by the sword. You have killed them in the day of your anger. You have slaughtered and not pitied. You have called, as in the day of an appointed time, my terrors on every side. There was none that escaped or remained in the day of the Lord's anger. Those that I have dandled and brought up has my enemy consumed.
Chapter 3. אני הגבר העוני בשבט עברתו, אותי נהג ויולך חושך ולא אור, אך בי ישוב יהפוך ידו כל היום. בילה ושרי ואורי שיבר עצמותיי, בנה עלי ויקף ראש ותלאה, במחשכים הושיבני כמתי עולם. גדר בעדי ולא אצא, הכביד נחשתי, גם כי אזק ואשבע, סתם תפילתי. גדר דרכי בגזית, נתיבותי איבה. דוב עורב הוא לי, ארי במסתרים. דרכי שורר ויפשחני, שמני שומם. דרך קשתו ויציבני, כמטרה לחץ. הביא בכליותי בני אשפתו, הייתי שחוק לכל עמי, נגינתם כל היום. הספיאני במרורים, הרבני לענה. ויגרס בחצץ שיני, הכפישני באפר. ותזנח משלום נפשי, נשיתי טובה. ואומר עבד נצחי, ותאכלתי מאדוני. זכר אני ומרודי, לענה וראש. זכור תזכור ותשיח עלי נפשי. זאת אשיב אל ליבי, על כן אוכיל. חסדי אדוני כי לא תמנו, כי לא חלו רחמיו. חדשים לבקרים רבה אמונתך. חלקי אדוני אמרה נפשי, על כן אוכיל לו. טוב אדוני לקובב, לנפש תדרשנו. טוב ויחיל ודומם לתשות אדוני. טוב לגבר כי יישא עול בנעוריו. ישב בדד וידום כי נטל עליו. ייתן באפר פיו אולי יש תקווה. ייתן למכהו לחי, יספה בחרפה. כי לא יזנח לעולם אדוני, כי אם הוגיו ריחם קרוב חסדיו. כי לא ינמי ליבו ויגע בני איש.
לדכא תחת רגליו כל אסירי הארץ, להטות משפט גבר נגד פני עליון, לבית אדם בריבו, אדוני לא רע. מי זה אמר ותהי, אדוני לא ציווה, מפי עליון לא תצא הרעות והטוב, מה יתונן אדם חי, גבר חטאיו. נח פסע דרכינו ונח קורא, ונשובה עד אדוני. נישא לבבינו אל כפיים, אל בשמיים. אנחנו פשענו ומרינו, אתה לא סלחת. סקותה ואף את תרדפנו, הרגת לא חמלת. סקותה וענן לך, מעבור תפילה. שכי ומעוז תשימנו בקרב העמים. פצו עלינו פיהם, כל אויבינו, פחד ופחד היה לנו, השט והשבר, פלגי מים תרד עיני, על שבר בת עמי. איני נגרע ולא תדמה, מאין הפוגות, עד ישקיף וירא אדוני משמיים. איני עולה לנפשי מכל בנות עירי. צוד צדוני כציפור, אויבי חינם. צמתו הבור חיה, וידו אבן בי. צפו מים על ראשי, אמרתי נגזרתי. קראתי שמך אדוני מבור תחתיות, קולי שמעת אל תעלם אזנך, לרווחתי לשבתי, קרבת ביום אקראך, אמרת אל תירא. רבת אדוני ריבי נפשי, גאלת חיה, ראית אדוני אהבתי, שבת משפטי, ראית כל נקמתם, כל מחשבותם לי. שמעת חרפתם אדוני, כל מחשבותם עלי, שפתי קמי והגיונם עלי כל היום. שבטם וקימתם הביטה, אני מנגינותם. תשיב להם גמול אדוני, כמעשה ידיהם. תיתן להם מגינת לב, תעלתך להם. תרדוף באף ותשמידם, מתחת שמי אדוני.
How, dun-dimmed gold, clinkins corrupted, scattered sacred stones in courtyards, copes, everywhere.
How, dear Zion brood, weighed good as gold, now like loamy pots, artifice of artisan.
Even jackals proffer breasts to suckle young. My dearest kin is cruel, now a gluttonous badlands ostrich. Sucklings' desiccated tongues to palates glued, younglings yearn for bread, to them no hand outstretched. Who gobble dainties, languish now in streets, whom scarlet swaddled now clutch heaps of trash. It's grown, my dear kin's sin, blacker than Sodom's, the sin spun spontaneously, though not by human hands. More pure than snow were Jerusalem's princes, more sunny white than milk, blush ruddier than rubies, bodies sapphire solid. But now, ash black their visage, unrecognizable, anemic skin hangs loose and dry as bark. Happier the sword slain than the hunger wasted, pierced, pining for the fatty field's fruits. Nestling women's hands have boiled their babes for food, my people shattered.
Almighty spent his frenzy, pouring his blazing nostrils heat, kindled flames in Zion, gobbled up the city's base. Incredulous the kings of earth, the denizens of earth as well, that enemy and foe should forge Jerusalem's gates for prophet sins, for priests' misdeeds, for hands incarnadine with blameless blood. The blind as bats would bumble through the streets, draped in defiling blood, untouchable in their crusted cloaks. Suru tame, strangers shout, off, away, don't touch me, vile vagrants. And so the nations gave notice. Almighty sundered them. No longer has love left for those who'd spurned the priest and calumniated patriarchs. Straining eyes still sought salvation, all in vain. We, waiting, watched. For what? For those helpless to help. They stalked our steps. We couldn't walk the streets. The close was drawing close. Our lifetime leaves. Our close has come. Swifter our pursuers than welcome wafted eagles, hunting us on the hills toward the brushlands' ambuscades.
Our inmost breath, once heaven loved, gasps trapped. We thought that in Yah's shade we'd prosper among the peoples. O you, dear Zion brood, your sin is past. He'll exile you no more. But you, Edom, who dwells in farthest Uts, he's seen your sin. He's tracked your trespasses.
Jubilate in joy, Edom, who dwells in furthest Uts. To you as well the cup shall pass. You'll drink and spew it too.
Chapter 5. Zechor Adonai mehaya lanu habita ur et cherpatenu nachalatenu nehevcha lezarim batenu lenochrim Yetomim hayinu ve'ein av Yimotenu ka'almanot Mimenu bechesef shatinu Etzeinu bimchir yavo'u Al tzavarenu nirdafnu Yaganu velo hunach lanu Mitzrayim natanu yad Ashur lisboa lachem Avotenu chat'u ve'enam Va'anachnu avonotehem savalnu Avadim masheluvanu porek ein miadam benafshenu navi lachmenu mipnei cherev hamidbar orenu ketanur nichmaru mipnei Zal afot ra'av Nashim betzion inu Betulot be'arei Yehuda Sarim be'adam nitlu Penei zekenim lo nedaru Bachurim Techon nasa'u unarim ba'etz kashalu zekenim misha'ar shavatu bachurim min ginatam shavat mesos libenu nepach le'evel mecholenu Nafela ateret roshenu oinala כי חטאנו על זה היה דבר ליבנו על אלה חשכו עינינו על הר ציון ששמיים שועלים ילכו בו אתה אדוני לעולם תשב כיסאך לדור ודור למה לנצח תשכחנו תעזבנו לאורך ימים השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש ימינו כקדם כי אם מאסתנו קצבת עלינו עד מאוד השיבנו אדוני אליך השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש ימינו כקדם
השיבנו השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה ונשובה חדש חדש ימינו כקדם one more time השיבנו השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה ונשובה חדש חדש ימינו כקדם. Please turn to Elit Zion, which is, I think, number 1 on the song sheet. Elit Zion ve'areha kemo isha ve'tzireha ve'kivtu la chaguratsak neyureha. We go on. Alei Armon Asher Nutash Be'ashmat Tzon Adarecha Vial Biyat Vecharef Meir Betoch Migdash Hadarecha Ale galut beshartiel neimei shir zemarecha ve'al damam asher shufach kemo meimei yovoreya ale egyon mecholeha asher damam ve'yareya ve'al v'awad asher shamam u'idur sanedreya alles yivchei temideha ufide oneh vechorear ve'al chilul kereyechal umizbach gerorecha. On this wonderful song sheet that we got from your synagogue, Dat Ariel, let's sing number 5, which I think almost everybody knows. Eli Eli Shelo Yigamer L'Olam. Chana Senish's wonderful, wonderful words. Eli Eli Shelo Yigamer L'Olam. Hachol v'hayam yishrush shel hamayim berak hashamayim tfilat hadam hachol v'hayam yishrush shel hamayim berak hashamayim tfilat hadam. And the next one, Meyal Piskat Harat Sofim Eshtachav Velach Apayim. Meyal Pisgat Harat Sofim Shalom Lach Yerushalayim. Me'at orot chalamti alayich lizikot lirot be'or palayich. Everybody, Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim. Hayri panayich livnech Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, Mecharevotayim. The rabbi says we should stand, rise for Aleinu together. Aleinu l'shabeach Adon HaKol, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא הזמנו כמשפחות האדמה. שלא אזם אלוקינו גוהם, ויגור עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הגדול ברוך הוא. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני מלוך לעולם מפאר פי נאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא.
Say thank you, okay? Adonai Echad U'Shema U'Shema Echad. Those who recite Kaddish, please join Yitkadal v'Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. V'yalmad divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayeichon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'galau v'zman kari v'yimru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam olmei olmaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekusha brichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlom Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav Huyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. A very special thank you to all of those who prepared and presented the beautiful reading of Echa in English and in Hebrew. Thank you all very, very much. A very special thank you to Rabbi Laufer, Rabbi Yarkin for teaching us tonight. Thank you. Your presence is a wonderful gift to all of us and to everyone else who joined us for this evening. Before we finish, when we finish, in just a moment, I'll ask you please to take all the candles, all the books, bring them back to the front here. If you'd like to take the readings home, you're welcome to. And tonight, before you go to bed, read about the exciting pornographic tale of what happened to Titus after the destruction. Would everyone please rise together?
Kalpayim liot amechofshi ve'aritzeinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim liot amechofshi ve'aritzeinu Eretz Zion, Yerushalayim. Bravo, it was very nice. Shkoya, very nice.